All right, today we're going to dive in deeper to some of what I think is an emerging class of crypto projects, and that is the gaming aspect of what's happening around blockchain technology. The concepts are getting even deeper and more interesting as we continue to uncover a lot of the industry. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back to Tech Path. Let's get into this today with Dominic Ryder, who is the CEO and co-founder and founder, I should say, of a company and a gaming project called vEmpire. Great to have you on the show, Dominic.
Thanks so much. Great to be here.
Excellent. Dominic, where are you coming in from today? Where are you located?
If I say the little town, no one ever knows it, but I'm just southwest of London, about 45 minutes out.
Gotcha. All right. Okay, so let's get into a little bit about, because one thing that we have seen, especially with just the crypto companies and blockchain companies from a development standard, are you guys all centralized in one place, or do you have kind of a dispersed team?
So when it comes down to the individual developers, we're working fairly globally. We're based out of the UK, but we've got people working
Yeah.
all over.
That seems to
We've
be
got
the case right now with a lot of the blockchain companies, is such a global, and that's interesting to me because I think you get different perspectives from developers in Asia versus developers in, the Middle East or in India. And I think that kind of creates a much more global experience for sure. Tell us a little bit about vEmpire, kind of the game concept itself, what you guys were trying to do when you launched the project.
So on launch, the plan was to very much try and keep as much of it within the community as possible. I went into it myself with the plans to completely bootstrap the project, but that was very, very naive of me. In the end, I didn't quite realize how much capital it may take to sort of get everything up off the ground. So we were a launchpad project through Unicrypt.
Yeah.
So I think we were the fourth ever incubated launch that they've done in their history. So that was a really good sort of boost to our IDO. We did take on quite a few VCs, some of which were fairly well known. We had Chris Hugh, who is the head of Asia Polygon. He
Yep.
invested through his VC, Lucid Blue. We had Odiana Ventures. We also had Prime Block Ventures. So when we were introduced to MEXC, where we jointly had our IEO alongside Unicrypt, they loved it so much. They also wanted an
Yeah.
allocation. So they were our first VC that came on board.
Interesting.
So yeah, that's how we launched IDO joint with an IEO on top 20 exchange. So that really gave us a kick.
Your background has been in the capital markets quite a bit. So obviously you saw something here developing in blockchain and kind of the evolution of what is happening in the gaming industry, especially on play to earn and kind of this whole idea of how GameFi is becoming a whole new industry. What was the connection between the capital markets industry and what you're seeing over here in the gaming industry from a blockchain perspective?
Yeah, so I was a stockbroker first and foremost, coming out of my teenage years. Even I got absolutely hooked in the gap year that I was going to have before going to university or college in the US. I got a role as a stockbroker, and I was
Right.
just instantly hooked. It was one of those commission only, 250 phone calls a day, just proper old boiler room. But that got me hooked straight away on sort of finance and the buzz of it, which is why I love crypto so much. And then from there moved into wealth management at St James's Place, which is a FTSE 100 wealth manager, and then at a
Hmm.
VC myself, where I first started, I think in 2018. So for some people, quite a late bloomer into crypto. But I guess what made me finally move into and away from traditional finance was just seeing the sort of the state of the crypto market this year. It just seems to be that the originality has gone, and the greed has taken over with so many different tokens that are launched with business plans of getting a tweet from Elon Musk. That's
Right.
pretty much it. Everything's got an Enu on the end of it, some sort of animal based or food based swap. Um, I just thought that a concept can still be original in this market. We are still young enough where innovation can still rule. So that's why I wanted to build vEmpire, because I saw what was being, pushed out, and it was all just slightly different forks of the same thing. And I thought,
Right.
yeah, I can create something better than this.
Let's talk about your protocol, because you talk about this a little bit being unlike anything than what most people have seen or reported on in the industry before. Explain that. How is it unique and different from what we have been seeing, especially in the early stages of what we've seen in GameFi, whether you look all the way up to Axie Infinity as kind of the alpha dog right now, versus a lot of these emerging games that are really getting some traction. How does your game project differentiate?
So what's interesting is I'm not sure whether it's a good or a bad thing, but when I first started writing the white paper, metaverse and game fee was really not talked about. And
Yeah.
now when I did launch, and I speak to sort of a exchange or thing, everyone says, "Oh, so this is on the back of the trend, isn't it?" It's like, no, it's actually I was writing this before, but it's obviously helped that it has become more and more mainstream. But
Yeah.
the main differentiators is that we are a breed of both DeFi, metaverse, and gaming. So how our protocol works is incentivized DeFi-esque emissions schedule, sending VEMP, our token,
Mm.
to Metaverse token staking pools. So users will log on to our platform, stake their mana, sand, AXS, STAL onto the platform and the app. We then send VEMP to incentivize people to put their tokens with us. And then once we've monetized those assets, whether that be from leasing land, selling lands, Starlink, you've got satellites, Axie Infinity, we've got over 200 scholars playing. We'll then
Right.
redistribute the yield back in the native token as well. So you've got at least dual yield aggregation, if not triple yield aggregation. Um, you know, Metaverse property is expensive. Even especially now that mana and sand have gone up so much.
Hmm.
So normal users cannot necessarily, not everyone's got over five figures that they can put on a piece of land, especially when it's a liquid. So
Yeah.
having access and being able to pull together with others means that you can benefit from, we have 5 metaverses and we gift profits from all of those to our VEMP stakers. So you're essentially getting a little bit of everything with our platform.
Interesting. I was looking at some of the, just the yield side of it. ETH was like 42% in VEMP, 15.99% in ETH. Axie, 345%. So how are you seeing
Mhm.
these massive yields kind of come to life throughout, the involvement within these multi-metaverse approaches?
So the primary yield is paid in VEMP, our native token. So that is released from our total supply over 21 years. So
Hmm.
didn't want to release it too quickly, because one of the main complaints of any DeFi-esque emission schedule is inflation. So by releasing it over 21 years, we make sure that we're always in sort of the lower numbers compared to others. So a certain amount of VEMP per block is sent to each of these staking pools. So at present, it's 1.5 VEMP per block. The emission schedule doesn't start until the 1st of January next year. So
Okay.
at the moment, the incentive is coming straight from me. So there's 300% yield and no inflation, which is the best of both
Right.
worlds for the next
Yeah.
month or so. But the secondary yield is coming from the monetization of those assets. So
Okay.
for example, we will go into a NFT pre-sale like Shiboshis, Shiba Inus, uh, purchase those. I think we got 18, and we sell those at over 1,000% in a week or so. So
Right, right.
because not everyone has the time that they can access these pre-sales at any given time and make sure that they're there and make sure they get the full allocation with multiple wallets, we're able to take that away from everyone's hands. So we can sort of scout for these opportunities as and when they
Hmm.
come up, because that's what our job is, and redistribute that back to users who are at work,
Right,
or
yeah.
just don't have time to follow all of this.
So you're building up kind of a war chest, these additional parcels, in kind of both within all of these different ecosystems that are out there. The process that you guys go through to do that, I mean, I'm assuming you have a whole research team that's constantly understanding where the drops are happening, where some of the value potentials are, because that obviously plays in to how your yield is going to come back to users inside VEMP. What does that team look like? How does someone put together a team like that that is able, because right now we're seeing so much coming at the industry. Just that I was looking at just the press releases this morning, and I mean there must have been 200 different press releases from game companies. So how do you guys identify
Yeah,
the winners?
yeah, it's very, very crypto that as soon as there's a new trend, you get 99 copy pastas for every decent project.
Right.
And, I'd say of that 99%, 97% are pretty easy to see that they're just, jumping on the back. I mean, some of the protocol names even, just sort of adding infinity on the end. It's like, well, I wonder what you're doing. But yeah, it's, a lot of them are very easy to spot, but really it's about predicting human behavior. The amount of returns we make just by buying a project that has an ape in it, um,
Hmm.
and people love it.
Yeah.
It's it's not exactly an investment strategy that I'd use back in my wealth management, but you cannot ignore these things. It's business at the end of the day, and if people
Right.
buy anything with an ape in it, you got to buy stuff with an ape in it, whether you like it or whether you don't like it, or whether it
Sure.
is just a copy of something. It's all about returning yield back to stakers at the end of the day. So we have a war chest already. As I say, our protocol is completely unique, that nobody else seems to be, building these massive amounts of metaverse assets across multiple metaverses.
Yeah.
We've got 60 parcels in Sandbox, made up of 3 different estates. We've got over 18% of the metaverse assets of Starlink's metaverse, as well as multiple estates within Decentraland and multiple Scholars and Axie Infinity. The ETH strategy that you mentioned is very unique as well. I'm going to be overusing that word soon, but that allows us access to all of the earlier stage metaverses and game fee companies that are coming up. If it doesn't fit and doesn't have, a $1 billion token yet, which is, a lot of this market, it's very early, then we can fit that within our ETH strategy, which is earlier stage, smaller tokens, smaller NFTs, and it gives us so much diversity. And one of the one of the great things about our project and being a layer 2 metaverse token, as I describe us, is that we're on the outside looking in, which means that we
Hmm.
can be flexible and dynamic, which is very rare in crypto. If a new project comes up that we like, we can add a staking pool, we can add it to our Ethereum strategy. If it gets to the stage where it goes from smaller to what would be a large cap, then we can set the staking pool, buy those assets out from our ETH strategy. So from my old fund management and sort of wealth management days, I'm applying the very same strategy to this and making sure that we are returning this all back to the people.
Right.
It's very quick that we can get priced out of this stuff as normal retail customers. So to get access to a protocol where you can, come along as one of the herd, it just means that you will not miss out on this virtual gold rush.
Yeah, I've been looking at index style approaches where if you look at how maybe an ETF operates, or even digital asset managers who are out there now working in the space where they're trying to do something similar, but they're not typically trying to translate that to a game. So I guess the question I have is, when you look at the assets that you guys are managing within all of these metaverses and how that ties back to vEmpire, explain the connection of how that starts to translate into the game itself and how the value of the game token becomes, a benefit for whether it's an investor or someone that's within the game actually, playing in the game itself. How do those two connect?
Yeah, so a common sort of a moan of mine, and sort of something that I sort of begrudgingly saw, was that, in Decentraland, for example, if you've ever jumped in, it's just art galleries and casinos and nothing else. And that's why I wanted to make sure that we were applying gamification
Mhm.
ourselves within these metaverses, and we weren't just buying assets. I don't
Right.
want to be as much as we are, sort of looking and turning into sort of a investor within all of these. We are wanting to make sure that those assets are serving a purpose. There's
Hmm.
lots of land in these metaverses where people just buy it and hold on to it, and it sits there empty. It doesn't look good. It doesn't do anything. Our goal is to make sure that we buy assets and build on them, which is good for us, good for consumers, good for the metaverses as well. There's nothing worse than walking around Decentraland and just walking over empty plots of land and then passing out galleries and casinos. So wanted to make sure that we were providing some imagination as well. We didn't want to just be a traditional sort of, like how a bank would sit there, buy assets, sell assets. We want to make sure
Right.
that we have a voice, a personality, that we are individual with our approach. And also that we're doing something different. We are in a metaverse at the end of the day. So why are we building stuff that exists in the real world? You
Hmm.
are not limited by, even gravity, age, anything can be done within the metaverse. But we seem to just be building stuff at present, not ourselves, but in the wider metaverse community, building stuff that can be done in the real world. And I think that's a severe limitation to think about the metaverse in reality and real terms, because it's not. You do not have the same limits. So why create the same stuff?
Yeah, I think that's an astute observation because one thing that we're talking about all the time when it comes to metaverse topics, the companies that are trying to bridge that gap between Web 2 and Web 3, really where I think the dynamic evolution is going to occur with what we've seen. Maybe still a few years away, but there will be some early companies that really kind of dominate in that. If you guys think about that in the sense of how early do you feel like the metaverse is for gaming right now? Do you think this is still, even at the speed in which blockchain is developing, do you feel like we're maybe a year or 18 months out before we'll start to see maybe some use case scenarios, applications that mainstream can start to identify with and plug into?
It's a tough question. But yeah, I'd say that, the first and the open metaverse as it is would be Decentraland. But I'm sure they wouldn't mind hearing this. They know themselves that their roadmap is not yet completed. And
Right.
at the moment, the gamification features are not there yet. And they'll admit that themselves. They've got the roadmap and they've got what they want. But I think the gamification is about as complex as a game of Pong, at the moment. Sandbox, and when they launch, should be the next step that will really show the
Hmm.
wider market what is possible. So I am hoping that next year, on the sort of alpha launch and when they roll that out, that should really be the main driver. That will be the news, the Facebook rebranding news.
Right.
I think Sandbox's full launch will be the next switch. Because yeah, suddenly everyone started talking about metaverse, looking at metaverse after Facebook. I think that the next thing that will really drive that is when they get to see what can be built in Sandbox. I think we got some footage we shared with you, which is
Yeah.
our world, which will be ready to visit once that goes live. But it really shows what will be able to be done within these. What Decentraland wants to have in their roadmap. But yes, I'd say one of the protocols I'm most bullish on, apart from our own, obviously, would be
Right.
Sandbox. 'Cause, yeah, it's really for gamification, it's the best metaverse out there.
Yeah. Dominic, you guys also have a card aspect to NFTs coming out later this month. Explain, because I kind of chance to peruse it on Opensea,
Mhm.
already performing well before you've done the launch. Explain to me what you're trying to do there. How is that going to tie into vEmpire as a whole?
So, making sure that our community gets recognition has always been something that I've strived for, and I want to weave sort of a web of gamification that spreads across platforms and metaverses. At the moment, there are no crosses between anything. Decentraland is Decentraland, Axie is Axie, Sandbox is Sandbox. There is nothing that links them, and we're quite compared to the NFT community. Metaverses are very much a closed book. I
Yeah.
couldn't tell you the amount of times I reach out to other protocols and just get left on red. It's very tribalistic still, and we want to make sure that we're connecting that. So how do we do that? Is by building our own games and spreading them into multiple metaverses. So the card game, for example, will make sure that we are hosting battles in multiple metaverses. We want there to be top players that are recognized, like esports almost. So how we will do that is by holding events for these games within multiple metaverses to try and
Gotcha.
attract and cross everybody into one, because at the moment everyone is closed off to one another.
Right.
We and I actively try and reach out to as many founders as possible, and me and Jeff from Axie Infinity Talk, he was very receptive to having a chat. But there's other ones where I just do not get replies, and I want to change that really, because it's sad when there's so much more collaboration that can be done. I particularly like influence.eth, which are one, and there's this the meta key I would look into. I only just started looking into it myself, but it's there to try and connect all
Mhm.
of these, and that's what I want vEmpire to do as well.
Yeah. I think that's going to be a really key you hit on, I think, as a big issue within the gaming community, especially in the early stages of blockchain gaming, is how this network, because if you compare this to maybe even early stage Silicon Valley, a lot of the original founders were very open with each other. There was a lot of sharing of ideas. Everybody, sure, they were competitive, but at the same time, they knew that they were trying to build an industry. And I think that's the thing that we've got to make sure is going to happen in the gaming community around blockchain, because that's going to be a huge opportunity for us, meaning, the entire gaming industry inside blockchain. Just in looking at, I was looking at just the other day, the size of the gaming industry hovering in the 2021 gaming industry, this is overall, at 175 billion, but people are actually looking at almost twice that size in reality. So you're talking about 350, billion for the size of the industry itself. And then blockchain really probably maybe 1% of that right now. So the upside for blockchain gaming is absolutely insane on growth. How quickly do you think we'll see blockchain gaming truly become, big enough in terms of market share to really see mainstream adoption?
Yeah, it's about following the money, isn't it? People can only scoff and laugh at something for so long
Right.
until it keeps earning money, and then that's when people notice. I've said a lot. This is going back to sort of my some of my more literature, sort of philosophical stuff, but there seems to be the trend where if somebody is working in a factory, and they lose their job to automation,
Right.
then it's always a terrible thing because they have to find a new job. And it's got to the stage in our economy that every time something gets automated, it's a new job that has to be found and a new job that has to be created. Hence the massive shift from primary and secondary jobs to tertiary in the service economy over the past 50 years. And the reason why is that every time that someone gets automated out, we need to find something new and find something new. And it's always service, service, service.
Yeah.
I dream of a time where somebody can get their job replaced by a machine and it's not a bad thing, where someone can just fall back and play to earn, where humans as a society do not need to feed the machine, where you need maximum employment. It's one of the central bank's chief top goals is maximum employment, and that's because our current economic model works on that basis. Yeah. But if we can change that to something where people can actually earn money just by playing games or doing what they like, then we've got a whole new way of living where we don't need to be so reliant on just creating endless low-paid, unskilled service jobs to move society forward. Yeah. I'm probably getting way too deep for the actual question, but that's where I see it. It's like let them eat cake, but let them play games.
Yeah. Well, I think that, Axie had, I hate to always reference Axie, but right now they are the alpha dog in terms of the industry, but they've kind of proven the case that it is a potential. The real issue, I think, at least in the coming years or months maybe, is that we've got to get mainstream adoption. So that'll be the biggest challenge that most people are going to be facing. But Dominic, Ryder, it's always fun to talk to game founders, because I think the key here, not only in understanding how gameplay and the creativity that you guys have done over at vEmpire is done, because that's kind of seeing behind the curtain, but it's also understanding what the future of this industry is really going to be about. So thanks a lot for your interview today. We appreciate you stopping in on the show.
You're welcome. Yeah, great to be here.
Excellent. All right, so you guys are tuned in over on the podcast right now. Make sure and give us a subscribe over there. If you're not, and you are saying, hey, I'm listening to this as I'm cruising down, or I'm running on my commute, or whatever it might be, the best place to find these kinds of interviews of CEOs jumping into the metaverse, into NFTs and gaming, and of course, all of the tokens and the projects that we cover here in blockchain is on YouTube, and you've got to get involved in the Diamond Circle. It's free to join and easy to jump in. So make sure and just join us there. If you guys have an idea for a show, make sure and drop it in the comments below. And of course, you can always reach me on Twitter, and it's just @PaulBaron. I'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.